Go ahead.
Hello and welcome to What's the Message? I am your host, Claudia Allen, and of course, I am here with my co-host, my partner, my editor-in-chief, the one we get stuff done with, the one and only Carmela Monk Crawford. We are so excited to be with you today. We are excited for the conversation that we're going to have, but to be quite frank, here at Message, our hearts are heavy for a number of reasons. And I would like Carmela to share a little bit about why that is.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you, Claudia. And thank you always for the hype. You always pump me up. I appreciate it. You know, it highlights how important a good working relationship is. And, you know, I appreciate you. This is our first podcast since we learned of the passing, the sudden tragic passing of our former associate editor, Pat Harris, who's a long-time fixture at Message Magazine. This is a ministry that has gone back, you know, well over 100 years. Message has been around. We haven't been around that long, but, you know, she worked for Message for 18 years, and her presence is very keenly, the loss of her is very keenly felt. The one thing that I want to say about Pat is that through everything, she kept doing what she thought was important. And that was not only sharing friendship and a smile, but sharing the love of Jesus. And that thing is so important. And it will always, I've asked the Lord to bless me with that kind of, you know, that kind of passion and that kind of zeal for people. And so I praise God that we knew her. I praise God for the backbone that she was to this organization. And so today we go on, even in spite of our tears, but we go on and we press on with Message, because this is the life, this is what she gave her life to. And so we'll continue today, and we continue even with a smile, because we know that in the end we will see her again. So I just thank you today, Claudia, for allowing me just to say a word about my dear friend. And I'm just happy that you're here, because, you know, there's a lot. You're right. Today is one of those days where we've got, between the news cycle, amid a pandemic, amid everything else, we've got a lot of layers going on. And so, you know, I think it's logical to feel a little conflicted, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know about you all, but, you know, we've basically been dealing with 4 to 5 cases of police brutality just in the month of May, at least hearing about it. We know that Ahmaud Arbery took place in February, but we saw the video in May. You know, we know that Breonna Taylor took place in March, but the story broke in May. And then there was Sean Reed in Indianapolis. And now we've got George Floyd. And at least on my timeline, it is, it's very, there's a lot of outrage. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of sadness. And so today, we are going to introduce you to our first guest. And before we get into the conversation with her, we're just going to ask her and Carmela to just kind of share their reflections on what's going on with all this stuff with George Floyd. All right. I am so excited to introduce you to Miss Ashley Ivey ASKEW. She is the founder and the CEO of In the Nick of Time, an elite mobile salon and spa. Ashley is a native Northern Virginian. Her love for healthcare began at the age of 14 when she became an employee for her parents' home healthcare company, iCare Inc. While in pursuit of a doctorate degree in physical therapy, Ashley was stricken with a life-altering condition in her late teenage years. Now, despite years of health challenges, Ashley graduated with honors and obtained her license as a physical therapist assistant. She provided care in hospitals, nursing homes, and home health care, all while participating in church, networking, and community events. With a heart for people wanting care in their own homes with a luxury and spa flair, Ashley followed the family entrepreneurial spirit by establishing in the nick of time the elite mobile salon and spa in 2014. This unique and advantageous model of providing beauty and wellness services to clients in their home quickly grew in the DMV area and is fondly considered the Uber of hair and nail care. Ashley lives in Leesburg with her husband, Larry Askew, and her three-year-old daughter, Angela, and 1-year-old son, Kevin. I have actually had the opportunity to talk and meet with Ashley prior to this. And one thing that I have kind of garnered from her is that not only is she a determined woman, a successful woman, but she is an educated woman that goes about all of her business with great care and consideration for others. And so I am so excited for you to meet her and for you to hear more about In the Nick of Time. Ashley, welcome to What's the Message?
Hello, Claudia and Carmela. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's great. It's great to have you. So as we begin, like I said, what are your reflections kind of on what's going on in the news?
So, as this particular story started to come out, the only thing I could think about was when I gave birth to my son. When I gave birth to him and we had skin time. And so that's when you put your newborn right on you. Mm-hmm. And Kevin and I have a special connection. So when I would breathe, he would, like when I would exhale, he would inhale. Mm-hmm. And I remember laying on him and just seeing how our bodies were, he's mine. Mm-hmm. Or he's actually, God loaned him to me. Yeah. But how our bodies were connected. And that's the first thing I thought about is my son. And he is a part of me and I a part of him, and how these situations, how I will have to raise him and protect him and pray for him and be concerned about him on a whole nother different level. Mm-hmm. And knowing that he is in God's hands helps that. But at the same time, being very concerned because my son. So the first thing, I have the anger and the outrage and the disappointment. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I'm looking at my family. Like what do I do for my son who didn't ask for this? He was born and he was literally, when they took him out of me, he had a smile on his face. He came into this world happy and joyful and beautiful. And how am I going to, as his mother, impart on him to protect him from those situations? So,
Carmela, what was going through your mind, man? What is going through your mind this week?
Ashley, that's so beautiful. And you know what? I'm going to hook my card to everything she just said, because I have 2 sons and 1 daughter. And the same thing is that as we see this happen to a brother in humanity, we connect on that level, and it hurts on that level. I think the other thing that I've responded as we look at this video, and I have to say that I regret watching that video. It just came on the news so quickly, and sometimes they don't give you the trigger warning yet, or they say this may be difficult to watch. They have no idea how difficult this is to watch. They need to say this is going to set in your spirit for the next month and a half as you think about it. And every time they play this over, they need to let you know that this is going to be something that you're going to need therapy for. But they don't do that because they don't think about it on that level. But here's what I will say. As I watch that thing, I'm struck by the police who stand around the perimeter and allow this thing to happen. And I'm making the connection for us who may be far removed from this, my brothers and sisters who don't know how this feels, but wonder and look at this with passivity and allow it to continue without checking it. I believe there's two acts that happened today. One, an act of commission, one, omission. The commission was the cold-hearted, what looked like depraved heart kind of murder, where you can just sit there and watch the breath of life leave somebody unjustifiably. That's one. But the other was that sin of omission. If we let this go, we are the vehicle that travels from place to place. You understand what I'm saying? The wider, the bigger offense is the ability for this to travel, just like the contagion of COVID-19. This thing is passing from place to place, and we allow it to pass. That is on us if we let it go. That is on our brothers and sisters, and I'm calling on and calling out our white brothers and sisters who are Christians to call this by its right name. That was murder. There is nothing supportive about the police, or you are not negating the role of the police to call out abuse. You are not negating their role in society to check them on abuse and murder. And so I'm calling on our friends, our Christian brothers and sisters. You got to say something, because this is where this contagion spreads. I'm sorry, you asked me and I can't.
No. That's all good, friend. That's all good. Yeah, this is what this is what the show is about. When we were sitting and thinking through what the podcast was about, we specifically wanted this to be a space where we could provide some kind of hope for our people in the spite of devastating headlines. And what you just said, Carmela, I think is the hope that people needed to hear. So very grateful for that. Now, I would like to turn to a more light and exciting topic.
If we can break away, really.
I think as a community, we have the tragic responsibility of having to witness these events, feel the pain, the burden, the anger, the sadness, and find some way to keep living.
Right.
And that is, I think personally, something that no other race has to do on a continual basis. That's something that we have to do. And so with that, with heavy hearts, we still need to figure out, man, do our businesses open? A friend of mine let me know that there is a vegan restaurant that we used to frequent in Baltimore that is permanently closed now.
Oh, no.
And so it's like, we've got small businesses within our communities that are trying to figure this thing out, trying to maneuver this thing. And now there's also this controversy around, do we open? Do we remain closed? What say ye, kind of a thing, And so I would absolutely love to kind of dive into that conversation with you, Ashley and Carmela, to just kind of get your thoughts. But first, Ashley, please introduce us to In the Nick of Time. What is this business? How did you start it? And what is the cool backstory?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in the nick of time, the Elite Mobile Salon and Spa is on-demand, on-location service. So, we have technicians all throughout Northern Virginia, DC, and Southern Maryland that come to clients' locations and provide the services they would like. So, that's hair care, nails, waxing, facials, massage, makeup, eyelash extensions, and spray tanning, all on location. The technicians bring all the supplies and equipment to do that. We were established in 2014. So someone did ask me, did you just think of this now? I said, no, we've been doing this for 6 years. And we have a healthcare background. So like you had mentioned, I started working in healthcare at the age of 14. My parents owned a home healthcare company. My brother and my sister started at 14. We got a worker's permit and a birthday cake. You were going to work if you weren't in school or in church, you're working. And that's where really my love of healthcare comes from. And I'm able to mesh that within the nick of time. So even before this, I had really quality and cleanliness standards that the technicians had to do. We saw people who were elderly. We've seen a woman with ALS. We've seen people in the hospital, and being very, very mindful of that. I used to always say, I don't hire divas. And the reason is because I work with people who have a true love and passion for what they do and want to give that to people no matter what's going on. Yeah. So even if they, have dementia, taking a little bit extra time to explain what you're doing, even if, a woman is on bed rest, it's going to take a little bit longer to do her manicure and pedicure. So I work with really, really compassionate stylists, massage therapists, and estheticians.
Wow. So in essence, you're saying that your business is actually more centered around compassion than it really is kind of like cosmetics.
Yes. And I think that's because of how it was created and why I created it. I am not a stylist. I am not a cosmetologist. I am the owner and the founder, and I was essentially a client. So I started the company because when I was 18, I was very ill and had to do chemotherapy for a set amount of time, and couldn't go to college or anything like that. My mom searched for things to make me feel better. And she always knew I loved my nails. So she went to 6 different nail salons and said, hey, is there any way you can come to my home and do my daughter's nails? She's in a wheelchair. She's not able to be as mobile, but can you do it right where she is in her hospital bed at our house? And one nail technician said yes. And so she would come after chemotherapy. She'd come and do my nails, manicure and pedicure. And that made me feel amazing. And so that's actually why we named it In the Nick of Time. People think it's because it's going to be quick and we're going to be there in 30 minutes, which we can, but it was really because it was what I needed right when I needed it, in the nick of time. And so, yes, so compassion is what we do. Compassion is what our technicians give to clients. Yes, their nails may look nice, but the care that someone is giving to you, that time, that personal touch, is what a lot of our clients like and why they keep coming back to us.
I love what you're saying here, because a few weeks ago I was listening and, we were talking about the whole, the COVID-19 pandemic and why the rates of cases and even death rates were accelerating among people in the African-American community. And the phrase that one commentator said was, many of our people are in the missionary careers. And so we think of that as ministry, pastoral ministry, but what you are describing right now is the mission side of any service, industry, job, or occupation. This is personal care and personal attention that's mixed with compassion. And if the right mix is not there, I dare say you wouldn't have a business. If your people weren't compassionate, if they weren't nice and friendly and weren't willing to use that personal care and touch, you wouldn't be where you are right now. But here's my question though, and this is why we wanted to talk about this today. But it is the very nature of your business and so many of my brothers and sisters' businesses that put you in close proximity to people. So what made you make that decision to continue? And you're letting us know right now that, you're getting ready to open back up and get going. What made you make that decision?
Right. So we ended up closing temporarily for about a month and a half. We made that decision, of course, because the governor said, look, businesses are closed. And then also a lot of my technicians were scared. This is scary. We've had to think a little bit differently. No one really had to think of the person passing you may give you a disease that could kill you, So we did close. The only reason why I'm able to be open is because of iCare, my parents' company, which is the home healthcare company. They have copious amounts of PPE because they have nurses and caregivers that go into clients' homes. So, and they've even encountered having clients that have COVID-19. So because I'm able to, we work together. I'm also the clinical manager for iCare, and I still work in healthcare. My technicians are able to have that PPE. So the technicians will have a face shield, they'll have the mask, they'll have the gloves, they have a thermometer, a thermal thermometer. When they go to a client's home, they'll take their temperature, it doesn't touch their face, show the client and do it for the client as well. And then we'll also have enough PPE to send to the clients. So once they book, they'll receive a packet in the mail with a little letter from iCare and In the Nick of Time, and they'll receive masks, gloves, and a hand sanitizer. Coupled with more education given to my technicians from the healthcare standpoint has really allowed me to even open or even think about opening. There are different precautions and things that we're going to require from clients because things are different. So you can't order 5 different services. We want the technician to be in and out in an hour. You have to wear your mask. There can't be anyone else in the room. So we have to set things in place to allow us to open and be very flexible if we need to close again.
Oh, wow.
And I think that is the difficulty that a lot of our businesses are having is because there's not a how. There's not an instruction of how are you going to do this? And because I work in healthcare, I was able to insert that how and say, we're going to be able to do it with the PPE, with the clients having it, with me I do Zoom calls with the technicians every week and telling them the new things that are going on in healthcare. So that's how we're able to do that.
Well, that's a blessing. This sounds like this model can extend for the foreseeable future. The model of making sure your client has the PPE, making sure that your people are up on the latest, I guess, best practices for preventing transmission and things like that. It sounds like this can be the foreseeable future, right?
Right. And the interesting fact coming from putting on my healthcare hat is that the PPE works. It works. I've seen it in home healthcare that when caregivers are putting on the mask, keeping them on, washing their hands, using hand sanitizer, putting on gloves, it works to help prevent the transmission of COVID-19. So absolutely.
Can I ask you one last question? CLAUDIA, I know you're getting ready to jump in here and I'm hogging the whole thing.
It's all good. Have your time, friend.
Talking about how, that's the joke on all social media. My hair looks a mess. My nails are grown out. Everything. It has been such a big deal, and it's necessary. This is something that is very important for us. But I guess my question is beyond that. As we look at the numbers right now, I checked just this morning. We've got. Maybe in the United States, we have 1/3 of the deaths worldwide due to COVID-19, right? In the United States, we've got maybe almost 1/3 of the cases worldwide. And part of that is because we didn't jump on this, you know what I mean, in terms of tracking. My question to you is, what would you say to other businesses that are maybe not as missionary oriented, or they are? What is the primary package of ideas that you want to give to them that would help them to reopen? Because while we've got, and we're going to talk about that more in a moment with our next guest also, is that, you know, we've got joblessness peaking at 40 million this week. So somebody's got to reopen. And so what would you say, if you're going to do it, here's how you can do it?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And almost a multifaceted question, because there are some industries that are going to have to look at a structure change because of the whole COVID-19. And I think, you know, it's easy for me to say, you know, you can change this, change that, and everything will be fine because I'm able to do it. So just because of the nature of my business, I do my website, I do my social media, so I'm able to make those changes very, very quickly, whereas a big organization may not be able to do it. But I do think one of the biggest things is to be mindful that there is no business unless you keep your staff and anyone who works with you safe. I think that's the biggest thing, that there really is the first thing is to say, okay, we want to reopen, but we're going to reopen on a safe, in a safe way, and to really look at what the CDC says about the safe way of reopening, and enforcing that. My husband and I had date night last night while my parents watched the children, and we just literally just go out, get something to eat, and drive around and talk and things like that. But when we went to a shopping center, the shops had, you know, in the front, you must wear a mask to come in here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, making that a statement right out the bat and putting things in place to be able to enforce it. So I think that's something that companies can do, and not being afraid of change, because sometimes it was so hard for me when I first started the company to change, even though I knew I had to change a little structure, but it was so hard because it was my baby and I thought I knew everything at the time, but really not being afraid of making some changes because of the COVID-19.
Man, this is really good. So one thing while you guys are talking that I really wanted to ask you, Ashley, because we talked about this a little bit over the phone, and Carmela and I talked with our finance columnist about this a few weeks back. But isn't there PPP? Like, so if there's PPP for which is the payroll program that is a loan program offered by the government. If that is available to small businesses, particularly supposedly to small businesses of color, then, you know, why can't small businesses remain closed, get the PPP, and then, you know, come back a little bit later, you know, for safety reasons? What are your thoughts?
Right. So I think that's an interesting question, because I have other friends that are African-American business owners. And overall, what everyone I have spoken to has said is that for a small business, it is almost impossible. Impossible is maybe a strong word, but it is very, very, very difficult to get documents required in a timely fashion. It is very difficult to meet the standards. It's difficult to do that on top of everything else you have to do. So there are some companies I do know that were able to get the PPP loans. They were a little bit bigger than a small, you know, but I think at the end of the day, we are going to have to do some soul searching and to be creative. Us as a people have always been creative. We have always been innovative. We have always, you know, made it work. You know, we all have grandparents that said, you know, I had no money, but they raised 10 kids, you know, and I know that's not the story we all want to deal with now, but we have been able to be innovative. Networking, even if it's networking online, talking to different people. One of the reasons why eye care was even able to receive face shields was because I was in a networking group. I had mentioned that we needed more PPE. Someone connected us with a company that was donating to home healthcare companies.
Wow.
They donated 1,000 face shields to eye care.
Wow.
So that's another thing, some things that we can do is to make those connections via networking, even if it's, via Zoom or some kind of online tool. So I would say, if people want to continue to pursue the PPP, to speak to your accountant, speak to your banker at the same time, and try it. But also really working with the banker so they can give you the details of what it requires you to do going forward. So
that's so great. So if you were to give a small business owner any hope or any advice when thinking about how to reopen, I think that was kind of the central point around, your thoughts. What would you say?
I would say, that's a good question. I would say, pray. I would say be in deep prayer, because it's a tricky situation that you will be in. But be in deep prayer and allow God to dictate how you reopen and what you do. And with that, also, like I said, be flexible. Know that you may have to change some structures in your company, and you may have to learn how to do certain things that you didn't have to learn how to do before, because you may not have the money to spend on $500 to have someone create your website and make changes. You may have to learn those tools. So that's my advice.
That's so great, Ashley. How can people follow you? How can people support In the Nick of Time?
Sure. Our website is inthenickoftimespa.com. We do have Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So that's how you can follow us.
That is great. Thank you so much, Ashley, for coming in.
Awesome.
Guys, this has been such a great conversation with Ashley, just trying to think through what is the how, what are the tangible ways that businesses can not only reopen, but do so safely and do so compassionately. This is something that our next guest is also very familiar with and very passionate about. And I'm so excited to have been able to meet and connect with him through Instagram, and to now call him friend. And so I would like to introduce to some, present to others, the Pastor Reginald Sharpe Jr. He is the senior pastor of the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago, Illinois. He succeeded Pastor Charles Jenkins in January of this year and is a proud native of Lithonia, Georgia, a product of the Greater Travelers Rest Baptist Church and the House of Hope, Atlanta. And he continues to be impacted by these two churches and their pastors, the late Reverend Hubert Floyd Shepherd and the Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. Sharpe earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in religion from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, a Master of Theological Studies degree from Vanderbilt University Divinity School in Nashville, Tennessee, and a Master of Theology degree from Candler School of Theology in Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. He is one of the proud charter members of the Academy of Young Preachers and was one of the youngest inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers at Morehouse College. He is currently a member of the second cohort of students pursuing a PhD in African American preaching and sacred rhetoric at Christian Theological Seminary in Indianapolis, Indiana. But one of the dopest things about Pastor Sharpe is, in spite of everything amazing I just read, right, is that in honor of the Emmanuel 9, He organized the first Black Lives Matter rally in Middle Georgia area and advocated against domestic violence, gun violence, and economic disparities in Macon, Georgia. But I think one of the things that I would like to add, having now met him on IG Live, is that Pastor Sharpe is one of the most authentic ministers of the gospel, with a very current prophetic voice that is caring about the needs, the holistic needs of our people in the great city of Chicago. He and his wife are truly amazing people of God. And if you are not connected to their ministry, I encourage you to check it out. So, Pastor Sharpe, welcome to What's the Message? It is such a pleasure to have you.
No, it is my pleasure. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Miss Carmela. I hope I said that right. And I did? Okay, great.
Absolutely.
But I
now,
wanted to be here.
Go ahead. Yeah. So we want to start off with each of our guests today reflecting a bit on George Floyd. This month has just been so tumultuous. And yes, we want to talk about these pressing issues. But honestly, man, I kind of came in just feeling heavy today, feeling like we can't talk about these pressing issues to the neglect of what's happening to our people, right? I feel like even though Ahmaud Arbery passed in February, and we've gotten names for the last several weeks, it seems like the entire month of May has been plagued with case after case of police brutality and police misconduct. And I'd really love to just give you a space to lament, share, reflect. How are you feeling? How are you experiencing what's going on with George Floyd?
Well, I appreciate that question and this space to reflect. What's ironic is I've been reading this book, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And so what was so eerie when I finally, unfortunately, and even regrettably, stumbled upon the video of George Floyd's murder, it reminded me of something that Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about on page 103. And I marked it literally. I'm going to show you because we're on Zoom. I can show you. I put stars by it, everything, underlined it. And I had no idea how relevant it would be the next day when I learned of George Floyd's death. So let me read this line. He's writing this whole book as a letter to his son. And he says, here's what I would like for you to know. In America, it is traditional to destroy the Black body. It is heritage. And those words just crushed me. It shattered me, but they are true. We have been slaves on this land longer than we've been free. And so there is a deep tradition and heritage of plundering, smashing, choking, lynching the Black body on American soil, on American concrete. And so when I saw that video, and honestly, I try not to see certain things because when you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And just to watch this man saying, I cannot breathe, then start calling for his mom, it just, it's devastating, but this is America. So before the pandemic or the virus of COVID-19, we've always lived under the threat of a virus, the virus of bigotry, the virus of racism, the virus of white privilege, white supremacy, the virus of xenophobia, where people are afraid of what's foreign and what's different. And so what this did for us and what this did for me, and I believe the outrage that you see, the rage that you see, the riots that you see, when you have to deal with a pandemic and then you start dealing with a pandemic on top of a pandemic, I mean, it won't be long before you see what's going on in Minneapolis right now. And Dr. King told us, he said that riots are the language of the unheard. Absolutely. So when I don't feel like you're listening to me and my skin, you don't hear my skin, you don't hear my struggle, you don't hear our oppression, this is what you get. And I believe it's going to get worse. And I think it should be this time.
Listen, man, I saw an article this week and I felt like it was such a great reminder. Someone shared an article about the Red Summer of 1919. And, everybody's been talking about the Spanish flu of 1918.
Right.
And I was trying to explain to people that, listen, a global pandemic has never stopped white supremacy. It has never said, you know what, as white people, we're just going to take a break from abusing Black bodies. That has never been a thing. Red Summer happened on the heel of the last pandemic that we had. And as you said, I really do feel like we're in a season right now that is going to be very similar to that, unfortunately. And it's something that we've got to look back to history on as a people and figure out, man, what are we going to do to really protect and defend one another? So I appreciate that what you shared.
I want to say one more thing about it. So we do this Zoom call with our family every Monday. And so we were talking about, I think, Ahmaud Arbery's case. So that hit. So he was murdered in February, but we didn't learn about it until, like you said, the earlier part of May. And so my great-grandmother, my wife's great-grandmother, my wife's grandmother, her mother is 4 generations on the call, basically. So you have my wife and her cousin, and then her cousin's children. She's 6 years old. Camille, 6 years old. The eldest person is 92. The youngest is 4 or 5. So you have 4 generations on the Zoom call. We get to the end of the call talking about Ahmaud Arbery, and I just asked, Camille, what do you think that Black people ought to do?
Yeah.
You know that this young prophetess said, and I quote, well, I really don't think it's what Black people need to do. I think it's about what white people need to do in stopping what they're doing to harm our people. 6 years old. Shut the Zoom call down. It was nothing else to say. He said, it's not what we have. We didn't create racism. James Baldwin, excuse his language, but I'm going to just quote him. He said, we don't need a nigga. You needed that. We need that. And so, it's not what we have to end, because it's not what we started. And just in every movement until the oppressor sees the sin of the oppression and joins and becomes an ally with the oppressed, you won't have any change. And so I feel so helpless. And I hate to say that. I feel helpless until we have more allies.
What I find, I agree with you. I have that same sense of helplessness sometimes. Yet in the face, and that's interesting coming out of your mouth, because what I saw in the last few weeks is a man so powerful just doing the church announcements.
Yes.
The fact that you now and you just running through the church announcements, what we're not going to do here is expose our people. And that, what just being you in your own space was powerful enough to create a conversation about our vulnerability in the face of what the structure of this society is, and how what that structure does to us, either on purpose or inadvertently, right? And so I saw a man powerful just doing the announcements. I love it.
Yeah, that's so great.
Such good feedback for that. Talk to us. The one thing that you said that
Hold on, Carmela, before you ask him, to what you're saying, you guys, we want to actually play the clip for you. So let's just take a minute and we're going to show you exactly how Pastor Sharpe's announcement to the church went.
You're still open. We're still worshiping. We're still doing ministry every week. And I thank God for it. But we will not return unto this building until the Lord himself wakes me up out of my sleep, slaps me 3 times, pours water from heaven on my face, and warms my feet with the fire of the Holy Ghost. And I have no choice but to jump out of my bed and say, yes, God. Until that moment happens, you don't have to call us. You don't have to email me. You don't have to DM me. We ain't coming back up in here. here until it is absolutely safe. We'll be back in here when the NBA opens. We'll be back in here when all the governor's mansions open for tours again. We'll be back in here when the White House opens again for visitation. Until then, until all of their stuff, and you know who there is, until their stuff opens up, none of our stuff will be opening up. Let the church say amen. Until we meet again, let me...
Yeah, the thing about the idea of until the governor's mansion is open, I thought was very interesting, is that because there's something behind that. There's a reason why you made that distinction. Why don't you spread that out for us right now?
Well, let me just say, I never in 1,000 years ever thought that my church announcement would go viral. I grew up listening to Bernice Jenkins, you know, Ricky Smiley's church announcement.
Yeah.
But I never thought my announcement would do the same thing. So you're absolutely right, Carmela. So behind that, you know, I'm from Georgia. I just moved up here with my wife about a year ago, and Governor Kemp opened up the state prematurely, some say, and I would agree, it was premature. And while he opened up the barber shops, the nail shops, the spas, and the this and the that, somebody asked, so I want to start touring in the, I want to go have a tour in the governor's mansion. Oh no, we're closed.
Yeah.
And so I saw some disparities there. So you opening up all of the self-care entities and spaces for interestingly enough, it was spaces that are familiar with the Black community. Barber shops, beauty salons, nail salons, you know, those are self-care spaces. And I was like, no, when y'all open up the governor's mansions and the White House and NBA starts playing again and NFL, then I'll feel safer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The church is not in the church anymore. The church has left the building. What do you think this is doing to ministry? And the reason why I'm asking this is because just last Sunday, May 24th, there was a group called Peaceably Gather. Mm-hmm. And I'm not calling them out per se. I just want to make a juxtaposition, because Peaceably Gather got together and they have maybe 200 groups, churches that are reopening. They have legal backing to fight for their rights, to be able to meet and to gather. And they have a minister came and he preached last Sunday in your town in Chicago.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And so let's just talk about the fact you're like, I'm not opening, and I'm a minister. I believe in the word. I believe in protecting my people. And here you got other people that say, we're opening. It's our right. We need to be able to worship. The president is with us to worship and open all this kind of stuff. Talk to me about that sitting in there in that space as being a protector for your people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I was hoping that nobody asked me this question, because Claudia, the more time you have to sit down and think, the more your thoughts become succinct and concise.
Mm-hmm.
We live in America. And one thing that I don't want to talk to anybody about is what our rights are. We have the right to go to church. We have a right. It's in these are our constitutional rights. We can look through 200 years of history where the Constitution has given rights for people to do something that was both unethical and immoral, and yet the Constitution backed it up. So just because a Constitution and just because rights are in your favor governmentally or policy-wise does not mean that that is a moral or an ethical decision or a utilitarian decision, which means that is for the greatest number of people, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Mm-hmm. And so once again, there's a thirst for moral leadership. So while that video went viral because it made people laugh on one hand, I think that we as a country are so thirsty. We are craving, we have an appetite for moral leadership. Somebody that's going to do what's right and righteous, regardless of the money or the capitalism or what's politically correct. Who's going to say what's right, what's safe, what's smart, what's wise? And so while you may have the Constitution backing you up to return to church, you have to ask yourself, but look at the statistics. we are the #1 leading country in the world of COVID-19 cases. I was looking at research this morning. There are not that many states that are seeing a downward trajectory right now with the number of cases. We're in Illinois, so it's ironic you said they're in Illinois. We're the 3rd leading state with COVID-19 cases in America. The Black community, I pastor a predominantly Black church in the Black community, and we know that this disease is disproportionately or out of control. That's a real fancy word for it. It's just out of control. It's unprecedented. It's affecting our people. It's affecting our people. And so if I'm called to be a pastor in a country, in a city, in a community where all of these facts are there, while I still have faith, I have to put the faith in conversation with the facts. And it's now my job as the shepherd to not just feed the sheep, but also fight off the wolves. And so that's where I stand on it. And I don't know, everybody has a right to feel how they want to feel. I'm not here to argue with. Listen, my grandma would say, nah person. I don't want to argue with nah person, but I'm just saying what I'm saying.
No, that's so good, man. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm wondering how pastoring has shifted for you during this time. And so it's like, you are trying to think through, how can I feed and protect my flock at the same time? And is doing that in the middle of a pandemic, is that something that you felt like you were prepared for, or had skills already, or has this kind of thrown you for a loop?
Well, you know, I appreciate that question. And you're such a preacher for asking it. I have always been one on the edge. I've always been different. I've always, just something was strange about me. And my favorite word as a leader and as a pastor is reimagine. I would say it in almost every meeting. I didn't realize it, but my staff brought it up to me later on. They were like, you're always talking about reimagine. So much so our director of membership has the word, found the word, put it in her office, because I keep saying, we got to reimagine, we got to reimagine. And then me coming in as a 29-year-old into a 70-year-old church where, of course, Pastor Charles Jenkins was cutting edge and all of that. But as he passed the torch to me, he said, now listen, the car is running, but we still need an oil change, or we still need to get the tire fixed. So I came in the door with the understanding I had to reimagine. So when this happened, it wasn't foreign for me, Claudia. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? No, it was, let's pivot, let's be innovative, let's reimagine. So we moved out of the building as early as possible. I decided that on March 12th, our last service was March 8th. People were still worshiping all over the country. I was like, no, the MBA shut down. And if they shut down, then we're gonna follow suit. So no, reimagining, moving things online, Zoom meetings. I did a memorial service on Zoom with the family. We have, what are some other cool things we've done? We're doing a graduation celebration on Zoom. We have our millennials and our marriage ministry. They have conference calls, Zoom calls. So everything is still popping. It's just all virtually. And since we've been the ship all of these years, the Spirit, I know it was the Spirit gave it to me. It was like, just call it the virtual ship.
Yeah.
We're going to do everything virtual. Yeah.
That's good.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Carmela. No, I'm just
say, you know, I was reading last night a verse in Ecclesiastes that said, you know, something to the effect that, you know, what's the good if you're a snake charmer if the snake bites you before you charm it? So you talking about prevention. You know, we have so much information and knowledge, data-driven analysis, and the ability to have the personal protection equipment like Ashley was talking about. We have this ability, but not willing to put those into effect and play. And that is what has caused for us in the United States to suffer at a rate that is inexcusable given what we have. Right. And I like what you're saying about, you know, hey, you have to be in tune and discern the times even before somebody tells you.
Come on.
You know, what is it that we need to be doing to protect our people? I love this.
Go ahead.
What'd you say?
I was going to ask a question, but go ahead. I like your question.
No, I was just going to say, what does I guess the balance for me, when you look at your members, and I'm sure many of the people in your church are both looking at employment, you've got this choice right now between life and livelihood. Livelihood. And for our people, it is causing us such a, this is a problem. I got to get back out there. I got to make this money. Or this is a problem. I got to do something, but my life is at risk. What is the spiritual thing that you're giving people, both for helping them to make that determination for themselves, and I guess something in the way of comfort?
Yeah. So, I'll never forget. Thank you for the question. The first sermon I preached in this pandemic was entitled "A Prescription for the Pandemic." And the text was Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Be anxious for nothing. King James Version says, be careful. Be careful. Don't be anxiety full. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. And my favorite verse, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And so I feel like, Paul wrote that from a place of the church he planted in Philippi is dealing with opposition. He's under the threat of execution. The Roman government has him in incarceration. So he's in incarceration. The church is under opposition. He's under the threat of execution. And he writes to a people, that's why it's good to get the context. He writes to the people and says, be anxious for nothing. And so I argued that while it wasn't the same kind of pandemic, it was problematic.
At the least, yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so there's still a spiritual voice that I have telling people, with all that's going on, we have to take the right posture. And that posture has to be, I'm not going to be anxious. I'm not going to be fearful. I'm not going to be full of fear, careful, full of cares, full of anxiety. But if I have to live, if I am an essential worker, or if working for me is just essential for my livelihood, move in wisdom. So we started the Faith and Wisdom prayer call, where I started early on saying you can have both. There is a thin line between faith and foolishness, but I know God wants us to move in faith and wisdom. So if you have to work, I'm always encouraging our congregation, wear your mask, sanitize your hands, wash your hands, put your gloves on, honor the regulations, stay 6 feet apart. If you can stay more than that, stay more than that away from people. So just move in wisdom. So while everybody can't shut down and just be in place, move in wisdom, and make sure that while you have faith, you still pay attention to the facts, while not letting the facts rob you of your faith. It's a balance. It's a dichotomy. It's a dance. And it's a beautiful dance to see people who are Christians still be wise and pay attention to science.
That's so good. That's so good, man. So my last two questions. One is, do you consider the Black community or Black issues when you're making decisions? How does that run through your mind in making that decision? And then the next question is, have you had to learn anything new? Have you had to teach yourself anything over this pandemic in order to better lead, better pastor, better preach?
That's such a great question. Number one, I will say that, I think it's Philip Brooks. He was a lecturer in I think it's called the Lyman Beecher Lectures at Yale Divinity School. This is his prominent lecture that only a few preachers get a chance to speak at. And so Philip Brooks was lecturing on preaching there. And he says, preaching is truth through personality. And so he spends a whole lot of time, that's just the simple version, but he says, you need the truth, which is eternal, and you need the personality, which is context. Who that person is, that's the context. So this eternal truth marries this context, and then it reverberates out of the preacher from him or her. And so I can't separate my context, my social location, from the eternal truth that I carry. I am both ontologically Black, and I am consciously Black, and I am socially Black. So regardless of what I want to, if I right now said, don't call me black, call me white. Socially, when I walk out the door, everybody else is going to say, you say what you want to, but you's a black man.
Absolutely.
And I cannot separate that. So because I'm ontologically, consciously, socially black, it does influence the way I see God. I met God through my grandparents. I met God through my parents. You know, they carried me to church. I heard my grandmother sing certain songs at home that influenced my faith, say certain things. You know, baby, everything's happened for a reason. God is in control. That stuff was fed into me. And then because I come out of Morehouse, where we were gifted this rich black prophetic preaching tradition, where the black preacher, this is so deep, cannot be what other preachers have the privilege to be in America. Other preachers, you know, and I'm using other because I want to keep it broad as possible. Because you got some black preachers that don't have black consciousness too.
Listen.
But for the black preachers that come out of the black prophetic preaching tradition, we don't have the privilege to get up and ignore the death of a George Floyd. We don't have the privilege to ignore the death of a Breonna Taylor. You can go down the list. You know, it's a long chorus. So everything I do spiritually, preaching wise, comes out of that context, comes out of that place. And while I make myself as broad as possible, because I don't care what color you are, we all need Jesus. We all need prayer. We all need to learn to love each other. But I come out of that black tradition. Does that make sense?
That absolutely.
But I love everybody. It's not a place of hate. It's a place of sometimes what comes across is not hate, and people get all, you know, he up there angry, you know, the angry black man stereotype. It's righteous indignation. You got a Jesus that went in a temple and flipped tables over. I ain't flipped the table over yet, so I'm good.
As far as I'm concerned.
Hey, I ain't table. He looked at a group of religious leaders and said, you vipers.
Vipers.
Snakes. And I ain't called nobody no snake yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So there is a tradition of that. And then secondly, what have I learned new? I mean, I've never had so many Zoom calls in all my life, so I think that this was new. I am, and all my friends laugh at me, I'm not the friend up on technology. I have the friends, so they help me. So this circle light that allows y'all to see me clearly, that you can see coming through my glasses right now, my friend bought that for me. It's like, Sharpe, you can't be sitting up in the dark talking to the people of God. So I've had to invest in my home space. I've had to learn certain things. Let me see. What's been the top new thing I've had to do? You know, this is real. I've had to learn, what does it mean to have pastoral presence when absence is necessary?
Wow.
So now, how do I have a pastoral presence when we were told in seminary, you know, presence helps people experience life from their pastor. But now I'm in a season where my absence secures their life.
Yes.
Wow.
So I've had to find this delicate, fragile dance of how do I still care for people when I can't touch them and I can't hug them and I can't at the funeral necessarily stand by them and hold them up in the way I would. And so what I've discovered, and it's ironic, Sunday is Pentecost. I'm understanding that the Spirit knows no boundaries. And the most heartbreaking thing, and I don't want to talk too long, so please give me the Baptist finger if I'm talking too long. But the most heartbreaking thing for me was when all of these cases started and we discovered family members could not go into these hospital rooms with those who had COVID-19. And so I would get these calls of people, you could hear their hearts breaking on the phone, screaming, screeching, yelling, weeping. I just want to be there with my husband. I want to be there with my husband to hold his hand. And I would have to say, and I know God gave me this, and I would say, you know, while we can't get in the room, there is no room that the Holy Spirit can't get into. And so I would pray, God, would you allow your Holy Spirit to walk in rooms our feet can't walk in right now? And literally some of those people, I've watched at least 2 who were in comas, medically induced comas for 30 days. Both of them are home now.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, both of them are home now. We've lost 4 or 5 members, We've lost 4 or 5 members to the COVID-19. One, we don't know if it was exactly COVID-19, but we know there were complications, but that's why I say 4 or 5 members. But when I tell you there's a list of about 20 to 30 that have come back, that I know it was nobody but the Spirit. Even when I couldn't touch them, even when I couldn't get my oil and lay hands and walk in the room and we couldn't touch and agree, we touched agree in the Spirit. So I've learned I've learned in a new powerful way that this is all the Spirit. It's all the Spirit. The Spirit does this, not us. It's what the Spirit does through us. And so that's what I've learned to trust on more now than they're preaching in an empty room and still getting happy. That's a reminder to me that the Spirit is at work. And watch this. 61 people have met Christ and connected to our church since we've been virtual.
Wow.
61 people. So once again, when I offer Christ through that screen, or I say, if you need a church on screen, see, the Spirit left fellowship and went wherever, in whatever city, whatever town, and was working. So I've learned to trust God more.
Wow, that's powerful, man. I am so grateful to have had you. This was such an amazing conversation, bro. What is the hope? 60 seconds or less. Not a Baptist sermon. 60 seconds or less. What is the hope in churches staying closed?
What is the hope in churches staying closed? The hope is just like Noah on the ark, that the dove was in the ark too, which symbolizes the Spirit. While we're in this, as long as we're in this, the hope is God is with us. And God has never needed a building to bless God's people. When the woman with the issue of blood was healed, that wasn't in a building. When the 5,000 were fed, that wasn't in a building. When Jesus touched those lepers and they were healed, that wasn't in the building. When he died on Friday and when he got up on Sunday, that wasn't in the building. So in the same power that works outside the building is working right now. And I know at the beginning I said I feel helpless sometimes, but I didn't say I feel hopeless.
All right.
Come on, friend.
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood. I'm done. 60 seconds up.
Listen, I'm about to shout here on the podcast, y'all. Listen, how can
the thing that I've been saying through Zoom Church, we need a Zoom Hammond app. Who's gonna make you know what I'm saying? So while you're in the middle of it, you can just turn over and be like,
Don't they have hoop triggers, Claudia? You know the
yes, on the phone or something. Yes.
Y'all got to download hoop triggers so when it gets good, y'all press the button.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
One last thing. Are you from Macon, Georgia?
No, I pastored there. I'm from only
I was
Georgia.
born in Macon, Georgia. I just wanted to. Yeah. But that's
know about Pinona Avenue?
No, I was born there and left. So anyway,
okay,
I just didn't know if you were there. All right.
No, I pastored there for 3.5 years. Thank you so much, and I apologize for my tardiness. The time zones were confusing, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nah, you're good, bro. You're good. How can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you? How can they support you, as well as the ministry over at Fellowship Chicago?
Well, continue to pray for me. Continue to pray for Fellowship Chicago. Follow us on Instagram. That's where it's really popping for me and for my church at Fellowship Chicago. Just at Fellowship Chicago. Follow the church. Follow me at RW Sharpe Jr. You can follow us every Sunday. The virtual ship takes off on YouTube, Facebook, and our church's website. So go to fellowshipchicago.com. If you're on Facebook looking for us, we have so many services on Facebook. Go to Fellowship Chicago, and then you can subscribe to all of what we do on YouTube, Fellowship Chicago. So pretty much, if you type in Fellowship Chicago on anything, I'll be there waving at you. And we'll board the virtual ship together. Praying for you all. Thank you for what you're doing. All this Black girl magic, I just feel it coming through the screen. So I'm honored to be a part of this. And again, my apologies on my, I was late and on time.
Listen, bro, you good, man. You good. Listen, guys, as always, it is a pleasure to come and do another episode of What's the Message. You got to make sure, listen, I don't know how more clear I can be. You got to make sure you are on message Magazine's Facebook page. You've got to get our bi-monthly print issue, and you have got to make sure you are getting our weekly newsletter. So go to www.messagemagazine.com. But wait, there's more, as they always say, right? Listen, you've got to make sure you are supporting this ministry, okay? We do not get many of the things done. We cannot get issues into the prison system. We cannot support pastors and churches if you do not support us. So we just want to encourage you to either donate to Message Magazine, or better yet, purchase some of our products. We've got amazing Bible studies that you can take with your family, that you can engage with your pastor. There are just so many products available online. Our tracts are very easy to pass out. And the thing is, at Message, we care about the holistic Christian. So you can get tracts and Bible studies about everything from diet to depression to what's going on in society. You really want to make sure that you are equipped with Message Magazine so that you are always ready. You are getting the message of redemption, and you are equipped to go forward and share the message of Jesus Christ. So make sure you are following us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Message1898. And go on YouTube, subscribe. Every single one of these live episodes is ultimately uploaded on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and our social media. Carmela, I see you trying to get in here.
No, I'm just thanking God for this. I just am basking in the word today and the beautiful things. And let's just get this work done so we can go home. That's all I'm trying to do.
I'm with you. Now, I am super excited about next week's episode. You do not want to miss it. We are going to have my friend, Pastor William Lamar of the Metropolitan AME Church in Washington, D.C. That is a homie of mine. We met on the ground doing some social justice stuff, and he just recently published an article called "It's Not Just the Coronavirus, Bad Theology is Killing Us Too," in the Faith and Leadership magazine that comes out of Duke Divinity. And I'm telling you, he is going to be on here next week. And this is going to be our first theological conversation, right, Carmela? This is where we're really going to finally spend some time and ask him about some of these points and thoughts. What is this bad theology that he's talking about that we are susceptible to as a people? So make sure you are right back here at 11 o'clock on Thursday. As I always say, listen, it's a new topic. It's just the same channel. So I will see you then. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Carmela, what are the 5 things you should not?
Different places, but there was going around on
Affairs and religious liberty, conscience and justice.
Now, to be clear,
in the North American Division of Seventh-day Adventists, and
especially if we've gotten to the point where we are.
Well, as you know, we're just coming off Easter weekend, and it's a new normal
day, and we're just gonna have a good time. All right, so welcome to
Carlton Bird on with us and Donna Green Goodman.